A while back, I did a video exposing fake pastors in Kenya. If you haven't seen it yet, you should, because it painted a picture of just how far some so-called men of God are willing to turn faith into a business. And somewhere in that video, I briefly touched on one name, a man whose story is fascinating, Pastor Victor Kanyari. Now, if you have been on the internet for even a short while, you've probably seen that legendary clip, the one where Kanyari is asking his followers to send in exactly 310 Kenyan shillings, promising them divine miracles. He called it Meguya 310. To him, it was a prophetic instruction. To many Kenyans, it was a joke. But for hundreds of his followers, it was a gospel truth. And that's where things get messy.
Ninaposema mbegu ya 310, ninamaanisha wakati unatuma kupitia namba hii za M-Pesa, milango yako inafunguka, unainuliwa na unabarikiwa.
Before we get into the scandals, the exposes, and the TikTok comeback, let's rewind. Because to understand Pastor Kanyari's story, you have to know where he came from, who shaped him, and how he built his empire of faith, only to watch it crumble under the weight of controversy.
Nimekwambia leo kutaharibika. Toa pepo kwa matako. Toa hiyo pepo kwa matako. Tingisha hiyo matako yako. Ndio hiyo wale wameana
Victor Kanyari was born on March 1983 and grew up partly in Lokto, near the Kenyan-Tanzanian border. Life there was quiet, rural, and deeply tied to traditional community values. But for young Victor, faith was at the center of it all. He is the brother to Starlet Wahu, the Kenyan socialite whose life was cut short in January of 2024 in what many believe was a deadly entanglement of a love triangle. For years, his family remained in the shadows, their private lives far from the public eye. In fact, very few knew of this sibling connection until that fateful, brutal incident.
Ni kweli, my sister alidungwa visu kama 3 hivi. Kuna mtu alimuua akamdunga visu kama 3. My only sister ambaye ameishi Amerika miaka yake yote, amekuwa
His biggest influence into ministry was his mother, Prophetess Lucy Duda. She was a bold, charismatic preacher and a woman who had built her own following, complete with miracle services, healing claims, and a reputation that was as controversial as it was powerful. Lucy Duda had her own brushes with the law and allegation of false healing practices. But to her son, she was proof that a preacher could command crowds, inspire loyalty, and create a movement.
But just as things were about to take off, she's jailed for 2 years for cheating a congregation. Prophetess Lucy Duda hit the headlines after she was found guilty of offering fake HIV cure through miracles to make money.
From all accounts, Kanyari didn't wait long to follow in her footsteps. As a teenager, he began preaching in small gatherings, dusty village churches, and other times in open-air markets. He quickly learned the staged way of Pentecostal preaching, which included the poses, the shouts, the sudden bursts of prayer, and the hand gestures that seemed to pull emotion from the crowd. He studied the way his mother could hold a room, and he copied it.
Naitwa Pastor Victor Kanyari. Mimi ni the son of Prophetess.
By his 20s, Kanyari had moved to Nairobi and set up his own ministry called Salvation Healing Ministry. His services were lively, filled with music, testimonies, and stories of miraculous healings. People came desperate for hope, and Kanyari offered it at a price. It wasn't just the preaching, it was branding. Kanyari understood that in Kenya's booming Pentecostal scene, visibility is everything. And so he invested heavily in publicity, which included posters, radio advertisements, and most importantly television. Kanyari launched his own religious broadcasts, eventually running multiple TV stations including Shifue TV and Gospel TV, which aired his services, healing programs, and dramatic testimonies daily. These stations not only boosted his reach, but also brought in extra revenue from other preachers who paid to air their own content. For a while, the formula worked. The crowds grew, the donations rolled in, and Kanyari's name became well known far beyond Nairobi. But even in these early days, whispers of doubt began to follow him. Some claimed that the miracles seemed too perfect to be real, while others wondered why there was always an emphasis on giving money before receiving a blessing.
Naweza sema niko na future na niko na hope. Amen. Amen. Nikikuja hapa I was HIV positive, but today I can stand here and say I'm HIV negative. Amen.
Then came the scandal that would define his career, and not in a good way. In late November of 2014, investigative journalists at KTN's Inside Story, led by Muhammad Ali, decided to dig into the growing allegation of fraud among Nairobi's miracle pastors, and Pastor Kanyari was at the center of their investigation. What they uncovered was both shocking and frankly cinematic. The famous Meguya 310 wasn't a mysterious spiritual code. It was a well-crafted money-making scheme. Followers were told to send 310 Kenyan shillings via M-Pesa as a seed for miracles, which included promises of healing, financial breakthrough, restored marriages, and even passing school exams.
Huyu ambaye unamuona hapa alituma sadaka ya 310 akiwa nyumbani, atatuambia ni wapi. Na alipotuma sadaka ya 310 alikuwa hana kazi. Hebu wacha tusikie alipopanda 310 aliona mkono wa Mungu kwa njia gani. Wewe ambaye umekuwa ukisileki hapo, tuma hiyo 310 na utaona mkono wa Mungu. Ingia kwa M-Pesa, tuma shilingi 300 na shilingi 10 kwa hii M-Pesa na uone mkono wa Mungu. Habari yako?
Nzuri sana nabii.
Umetoka wapi?
Nimetoka pande ya Thika.
Shida ilikuwa gani?
Nabii, nilikuwa nimekosa kazi kwa muda mrefu. Nilikuwa nimeenda interviews mingi sana, wote wakinipromise kwamba nitapata kazi. Lakini siku moja nikakusikia kwa TV, nikaona kipindi yako, na hapo chini ukasema mtu akiwa na shida yote kwamba atafute mbegu ya 310 na asimamishe. Nikasimamisha hiyo mbegu nikiamini kwamba Mungu atatenda na utasikia kilio changu na utaniombea na nitapata kazi.
But the most damning part of the expose was the testimony coaching. Former church members revealed they had been paid and instructed to give fake testimonies of healing. One witness described how the scenes were staged. It involved pretending to be sick or crippled and later walking or smiling for the cameras, all to convince the congregation that miracles were happening.
Wakati mtumishi wa Mungu nilimpigia simu aliniongea na mimi kwa simu after kumtumia SMS, akaniambia, my sister, umesumbuka sana lakini kuna vitu zimewekwa hapo nyuma ya mlango ya biashara yako.
And what of the Bible verse Kanyari used to justify the number 310? Investigators believed it was just a trick which involved an amount small enough for poor followers to give without thinking twice, but when thousands of people sent it, it brought in huge money. The expose hit like a bombshell. Clips of Kanyari demanding Meguya 310 went viral overnight. Memes flooded social media, radio stations played the audio on repeat, and the man who had built his image as a spiritual healer was now the face of religious fraud in Kenya. The aftermath was brutal. Attendance at Salvation Healing Ministry dropped drastically. Many Kenyans abandoned him entirely, calling him a conman. Several TV networks cut ties, pulling his programs off air. His ministry's income also shrunk drastically. The scandal also reaped into his personal life. His marriage to Kikuyu gospel musician Betty Bayo fell apart. Betty publicly distanced herself, saying she didn't know about the fake miracles. The split became a topic of discussion, with Kanyari later claiming in interviews that Betty had moved on too quickly. But this is what Kanyari recently had to say about Betty Bayo.
Betty Bayo aliolewa, mimi bado niko single. Nilikula kidogo alafu nikakama haraka. Yaani nikamwaga haraka. Kumwaga haraka aligeuka akaniambia, hii ni choo. Hii ni choo. Hii ni choo. Shuka urudi kwenu. Shuka urudi kwenu. Hii ni choo. Nilifukuzwa hiyo siku, nikaanza kujifunza kuzuia.
For a man who thrived on public adoration, the humiliation was crushing. And yet, Kanyari didn't disappear entirely. He kept preaching to a smaller core of loyal followers and continued running some of his TV stations, though with less fanfare. For several years, he was mostly out of the mainstream conversation. Around 2022, something shifted. Pastor Kanyari began showing up on TikTok, not as the serious man in a suit, but as a bold and sometimes over-the-top character. His videos were unpredictable. One day, he'll be preaching, the next, he'll be cracking jokes, showing off cars, dancing, or making bizarre statements that stirred up comment sections.
Believe me, nitaoa hapa kwa TikTok. Tapata kasichana kazuri hapa kwa TikTok. Na usiniambie lazima watu wajuane, hakuna mambo ya kujuana. Mkipendana mmependana, mpelekane kupelekana. Mkiwezana sawa, mkishindana ni sawa. Nakuja tu hapa kwa TikTok nasema mimi kwa nimeoa huyu na tumeshindana, watu elewa.
It seemed he had stopped trying to win back the title of a respected pastor and instead leaned into being a proactive online personality. Some saw it as desperation, others saw it as smart rebranding. After all, controversy drives views, and views can drive income. By courting a younger, more entertainment-driven audience, Kanyari had found a new way to stay relevant. And yet, his core identity as a preacher never completely vanished. He still runs services, still appears on his TV channels, and still refers to himself as a man of God. But for many Kenyans, especially the ones who remembers 2014, the trust is gone forever. The story of Pastor Victor Kanyari is a layered one. It's about faith and manipulation, media power and scandal, public disgrace and an unexpected reinvention. From the dusty village of Lokto, inspired by his mother's controversial ministry, to building one of Nairobi's most visible churches and running multiple TV stations, to being taken down in one of the most explosive religious exposes in Kenyan history, to re-emerging as a polarizing meme-worthy TikTok personality, Kanyari's life shows us one thing. In the age of the internet, once you've made a name good or bad, disappearing is almost impossible. And sometimes the very scandal that destroys you is the same one that keeps you famous. Make sure to like, share and subscribe to never miss an episode.
You cannot keep mentioning Prophet Kanyari. Who is Kanyari to your life? Mimi bibi yako. Am I your wife? I'm asking you. Unakaa unanitusi mimi. Umeniongelelea. Mpaka saa hii sikuwa niingie TikTok. Sikuwa niingie TikTok saa hizi. Sikuwa niingie TikTok. Unasikia ama nitakufa. I'm feeling like crying. I wish you know me. I'm feeling like crying.